What the heck? Keely? What the heck?
No lies, I'm actually quite satisfied with the Game Award nominations this year. I sat through the 5-minute reveal that, Jeff Keighley and his massive ego had to stream early in the morning as if it was some spectacle. Well, it sort of was. We were all expecting Dragon Age Veilguard to get at least one nomination snuck in there for something, and they managed to pull it off. But you could tell by the look in Jeff Keighley's eyes that it brought him great sadness that he couldn't just nominate solely PlayStation games and woke games. The soul was sucked straight out of him. Poor guy. Well, I don't know why I'm saying poor. He only works once a year. No, seriously, this guy gets to sit around for an entire year doing nothing, and then he gets one massive payday to host a very cringe-ass award show and call it a day. So I don't know why he always looks so sad. Either way, the nominations came in, and I didn't actually take too many problems with them. I mean, some categories don't make sense, per usual, like we expect. Now, the biggest surprise for me was, no, not that Elden Ring was so good it got nominated to receive another potential Game of the Year. I mean, I can't blame them. That DLC is damn good. But admittedly, it shouldn't be there. No, that's not the surprise. The surprise for me was they didn't hold back. They actually gave Myth Wukong several nominations, including for Game of the Year. Asmongold and several other content creators were quite worried that this honest-to-God great game was going to get snubbed, and I'm happy it didn't. It is easily my favorite game this year. The only people I know who don't like it are people who are bad at games. Griffin Gaming. But if you're good at video games and you've played a lot of action games that actually have deep mechanics, you would appreciate how great this one is, especially in the visual department, if that's something that matters to you. I knew the game was great and that it was massively underrated when it came out by critics, who intentionally gave it a lower score because they accused the studio of being sexist. Yeah, there's no shame amongst game reviewers. They are that biased. Our worry was that Dragon Age would take the spot, but for some reason, Jeff's brain seemed to work this time around. It's almost as if, Trump winning the election has shifted the momentum in the air. Things are looking different, a lot more positive for us. Except if you're Reforge Gaming and Dreamcast guy who are furious. Well, in general, the PlayStation fanboys are out for blood. And if they're not out for blood, then they're out to try and give Sony credit for every single game that released this year. I kid you not. Check this out. Hashtag PS5 is the only console you can play all 6. Hashtag Game Awards, Game of the Year nominees. You can play 3 of them on Xbox and only 1 on Switch. Even on an off year, PlayStation manages to snag limelight and pedigree, begin the salt mining.
You ever stop and think, wow, I'm married to that guy?
That's actually not a good sign, Nib. When you have to include third-party games, it's usually telling of how dry of a year it's been for PlayStation. That's more dry than Ben Shapiro's wife's
P-word. P-word is female genitalia.
And the craziest part is this guy doesn't think he's a fanboy when this is quite literally what a fanboy would do. Keep count of which console has the most amount of games selected for Game of the Year, even if they are not exclusive to said console. But either way, we got bigger fish to fry, fish with Jimmy Neutron hair.
I think Wukong is involved personally for the same reason that Erdtree's involved. I think Keeley's playing a marketing game. I think he knows viewership for the event will be higher because Wukong's involved. I think he knows that being, keeping things nice with Bandai and a title the size of Elden Ring. I find it incredibly hard to believe that all these outlets suddenly decided that they were going to say, yeah, we think we want to vote for a DLC. All these outlets that didn't score Myth Wukong that high suddenly decided that it should rank higher than Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm suspicious of the whole thing now. It's like, wait a minute. If you go to OpenCritic and you go to Metacritic, this is really easy to figure out where the jury process is going to land.
Maybe what I'm about to say is controversial here, but I actually like that all of those reviewers are being undermined heavily right now. With Myth Wukong being nominated for several awards after all those very same journalists tried to put it down and the studio behind it claiming it didn't have enough women representation. It does bring a big old Kool-Aid smile to my face to see that none of those reviews matter. If we go over to Steam, we can see the overwhelming reception it got because the game is good. Don't listen to jackasses who haven't even gotten past like the third boss. The game has so much replay value, it's insane. Clearly a good game deserving to be nominated is what's happening here. But instead, Reforge is saying it's all for viewership. All for viewership, yeah, okay. I highly doubt China cares about an American award show for their favorite game. China's already decided it's their favorite game. It doesn't need to be reinforced by Jeff Keighley's show.
All you have to do is go and look at the scores for Black Myth. Where did all these outlets come from that suddenly voted for it? It doesn't make any mathematical sense. Like, seriously, go crunch the numbers. It doesn't make any sense.
You know, I don't know if you've ever considered this, but perhaps the people voting on it are not the same people that reviewed and gave scores to those games. Perhaps it's a whole different jury.
Black Myth doesn't make any sense. And try and square this with the people that try to call me a pony. The PlayStation ponies were celebrating Black Myth as a huge triumph because Xbox couldn't get it. And I've been very critical of that game since jump. So try and square this with all the, categories and ugly names that you try to apply to me.
Wow, that's pathetic. Every single PlayStation fanboy I know by now would have embraced being called a pony because, at the very least, they're not ashamed to admit what they are. Reforge, on the other hand, has had quite some trouble finally just confessing to the world that he is a PlayStation fanboy. So he'll try and throw other ponies under the bus to make himself look better, but in reality, he just looks like a jackass no matter the outcome.
See on all your videos about me. I don't think Black Myth has the math behind it to make sense of why it's in so many categories. It doesn't make any sense.
I wonder why you didn't do this math when it came to The Last of Us 2, all right? That game was panned harshly by gamers themselves, okay? We have had games with, scores of 80 win Game of the Year before. He's saying the math ain't adding up. Well, here's the mistake he's making in the first place. And that mistake is considering those critical reviews to mean anything. Have you read them? Have you read the Black Myth Wukong review? They are littered with resentment towards the studio for not being ultra progressive. Instead, what they did is they went and they praised Dragon Age more and tried to trick everybody into thinking that was going to be a Game of the Year contender. So maybe it's time you stop giving so much power to these reviewers as if anything they say actually matters and should be taken into account when it comes to nominating a Game of the Year. No.
We looked at the scores last year and we perfectly predicted all of the Game of the Year nominations. It wasn't difficult. This year, you've got DLC up there and a game that isn't even remotely in the score thresholds of other games this year.
He's salty about Elden Ring taking it. Yes! Get f***ed. I love it. I love it. Oh my God, what made Jeff Keighley's entire party finally decide to nominate the right games? Yeah, admittedly, like I said, Elden Ring shouldn't be there, the DLC anyway, but it's practically its own standalone game. I mean, it is big. You could literally count it as a whole other game, but there are other games that could have taken its place, but if we're being real, none of them match the quality. Elden Ring is simply that good, and the salt it's delivering 2 years later has not stopped. If it wins Game of the Year, we are going to have an unprecedented meltdown from fanboys all over the internet. And you know exactly who to tune into if that happens. Yours truly.
People loved Wukong. It's not a viewing move. We're discrediting the whole institution over a game that was a worldwide phenomenon. It wasn't a worldwide phenomenon. 90% of its sales came from China. It wasn't a worldwide phenomenon. Go look at the scores. The review outlets did not land on that game to make sense of a Game of the Year nomination. It doesn't make any sense at all. The math's not there. It was rumored that it was going to be shut out due to politics, so I think they nominated to be like, see, we like this game. Why would you rule it out over politics? Lots of games have huge sales in China. Right, but if you look at the actual sales percentages, to call it a global phenomenon is simply false. It wasn't a global phenomenon. Like, that's not true.
Wow, what were you trying to say, Reforge, that China doesn't count because it's China? I don't know if that's the sentiment I would go with, but in my opinion, it most certainly was a worldwide phenomenon. It broke records on Steam. I mean, very, 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 very few single player games get a peak concurrent player count of over 2 million. It was absolutely a big deal that was undermined by Western journalists and jackasses like you who just blindly follow them and believe anything they put down. You should be ashamed of yourself. How about you go play these games more often? How about you actually try to beat them instead of rage quitting like you did with Elden Ring? All right, don't think I didn't see you on stream. Don't think I didn't see you bashing Miyazaki. I was there. Gotta love that denial. It was easily probably the most successful single player game of the year. By far, it wasn't even close. I can't name you another game that reached that level of success.
I know I'm going to get clipped and accused of being a wokey because I don't love Black Myth Wukong, because a bunch of grifting liars turned Black Myth Wukong into a culture war because they have no content without a culture war. But I was fully in support of that game.
All right, so you mean to tell me you weren't there seeing the reviews being put out and journalists docking it points because it didn't have enough women, even though it had a lot of women in it? Come on, dude. There was a total agenda against the game, and seeing it nominated is probably making all those review sites very spiteful right now. And its subscribers, idiots like you. Black Myth Wukong was a game that they tried their absolute hardest to put down because it was attracting a specific audience, an audience that doesn't want ugly women or DEI hires in their games. Journalists were trying to deliver a message to gamers by throwing that great game under the bus. And it's so funny to see everybody buy into the narrative, including you, because now it's nominated and you're left puzzled, questioning your entire existence. You are such a goddamn soy jack. Shut up, dude. And spending, I kid you not, over 20 minutes ranting about it. I didn't show you the whole thing, because now we gotta move on to Methcast guy.
The two odd men out, Black Myth Wukong, I am surprised to see that there. Personally, I enjoyed Stellar Blade a lot more than Black Myth Wukong, but Black Myth Wukong is a good game. I think a lot of people are upset about Elden Ring's DLC because this is in a bunch of categories. We're going to take a look at it, but...
Yeah, I love it. All the PlayStation guys want is for these things to be littered and filled with solely PlayStation titles. No, miss me with that shit. Look, I like Stellar Blade as well, but it ain't no Black Myth Wukong. Sorry, but Black Myth Wukong has much more refined controls and combat. He's surprised Black Myth Wukong is there. Why? Why is anybody surprised? The only way you would be surprised is if you actually buy into game critics' reviews. If you actually buy into that crap, you're an idiot. But they're all relying on the critic scores and tallying it all up in their heads. It's pathetic. All they want is for it to be solely PlayStation titles. They'll never admit that, but you can tell. Well, actually, the only people I've seen upset about that are literally console fanboys. They wanted Helldivers 2, they wanted Stellar Blade, Astrobot, Final Fantasy 7, and nothing else.
Elden Ring has already swept the Game Awards. Elden Ring already won a bunch of stuff, so the fact that it is once again possibly going to sweep the Game Awards, but this time with downloadable content.
And that's why we're gonna call it Elden Sweep 2, baby! Okay, well, how do we cope with this meth? Lots and lots of meth. Oh my god. Oh, you mean to tell me there's salt outside of the ponies? Oh, I must harvest it. I have to get my hands on this precious salt. But you know what? Should probably save that for another video. I don't want to give you too much content now because, I've been learning the less you give your viewers, the more they like you. Well, I'm assuming that's how it works based on the viewership of other content creators. We're gonna milk this. We're definitely going to milk the ever-loving crap out of it. Black Myth Wukong and Elden Ring salt. Oh, you can't go wrong with either winning. If either win, it's going to draw in a lot of heat. And that's where I thrive the most, is in the toxicity of all of it. So, if you want to be there when it happens, like, comment, share, and subscribe if you so choose to. The meme edits I will be making. Oh, God. Mwah. Can't wait. See you then.
Free Congo sucks ass.